This upcoming Friday, October 3rd, 2025, is a massive day for the mixed martial arts community, and it is an even bigger day for the Professional Fighters League. The main event will feature the rematch of the greatest fight in the company's history, and that was between Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes in January to kickstart the year, and now we get to see him run it back 8 months later. In their first fight, these two would go toe-to-toe for 25 straight minutes in what was unanimously agreed upon by a majority of the mixed martial arts community as the greatest fight in the PFL's history. And not only was it highly competitive, but it displayed some very high-level mixed martial arts as well, en route to the majority decision victory for Usman Nurmagomedov to stay perfect as a professional fighter, moving to 19-0 after that victory. And with that majority decision, that means that Usman Nurmagomedov won the fight on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards, 48-46 on both, and the third scorecard featured a 47-47 draw, with the point deduction for Usman happening in round 3 across the board due to low blow strikes consecutively. The winning scorecard for Usman Nurmagomedov on the side of Eric Cologne featured rounds 1 and 2 going to the champ and round 4. And the second winning scorecard for Usman was from Sal D'Amato, where he scored at 1 and 2, the same as Cologne. But rather than scoring round 4 for Usman, he instead gave that to Paul Hughes and gave the 5th and final round to the champion. And for what it's worth, the scorecard that scored it a draw from Hadi Muhammad Ali, 47-47, he gave round 1 to Usman, as did all 3 judges. However, he gave round 2 to Paul Hughes alongside with round 4. But regardless, it does seem as though the rightful winner was crowned that night in Usman Nurmagomedov, as the media scorecards also agree with the judges. But I would love to hear from you if you can go back memory-wise to that day in January of this year. Did you feel at that point that Usman had done enough, or did you think Paul Hughes did enough to give him the first loss of his career? And in the aftermath of that fight, it left the MMA community clamoring for more, wanting an instant rematch between the two after this all-time classic, but that is not what we would be awarded. For Usman, he has not fought since then, so this will be his second fight of the year, both of them being against Paul Hughes. However, for Hughes, the former Cage Warriors champion turned 3-1 PFL fighter, he would fight against Bruno Miranda in May and get a first-round knockout to solidify that he is next for Usman Nurmagomedov's crown and that he has the rightful claim to that rematch after taking him the full 25 minutes just a few months prior to the Miranda victory. Not to mention that in Hughes' second PFL fight, he got a victory over the former Bellator champion AJ McKee via decision. And what's even crazier is that these two are 27 for Usman and 28 for Paul Hughes respectively, and haven't even technically reached their fighting primes, which we typically see around 30, 31, 32 for most fighters. And look at all that they have accomplished already. For Usman, a 19-0 record with 14 of those 19 by way of stoppage, numerous title defenses now between Bellator and the PFL. And for Hughes, as I already mentioned, a former Cage Warriors champion, victories over AJ McKee, Morgan Charrier, Jordan Vucinic, and overall has finished 10 of his 14 professional victories and has won 8 of his last 9 bouts, with the only loss being to Usman back in January. This fight has all the makings to be an instant classic again. Unfortunately, that's kind of a bad thing as well, because we have these very extremely high expectations, and we probably should temper those down, because the odds of getting an instant classic like we saw 8 months ago is likely not to happen. These guys are too good. They took too much away from that fight with one another to just go in and do the exact same thing and deliver another banger. But that's not to say that this fight is going to be bad by any means. I still expect a very high-level mixed martial arts bout, this time potentially with a little less volume and output and some more strategy displayed from both gentlemen en route to wanting to either become the champion in Paul Hughes or to remain the champion for Usman. And I of course think it's possible that should Paul Hughes become the new champion by defeating Usman Nurmagomedov, the first man that would ever have that chance to say he has done so, it would absolutely guarantee that we would get a trilogy bout between these two in 2026. So be sure to let me know down in the comments below your predictions for this rematch between Paul Hughes and Usman Nurmagomedov. What are your bold predictions? What are your bets and everything in between? I want to hear from you in what is potentially the biggest fight in the PFL's history. Not to mention, this is kind of the Temu version of Conor McGregor versus Habib Nurmagomedov, Ireland versus Russia, but make it PFL. This is going to have the MMA community's eyeballs glued to the screens on Friday afternoon to see this historic fight go down. And that main event isn't the only rematch on this PFL card, because in the co-main event, we will see a light heavyweight championship fight rematch as well, and that is between Corey Anderson, the longtime UFC veteran, and Dovletzdhan Yagshimuradov, who is the 2024 PFL light heavyweight champion, looking to solidify himself and put a stamp on it with a victory over Corey Anderson, what would be the biggest name on his resume to date. And I say this fight is a rematch because in Corey Anderson's second fight with Bellator after jumping over from the UFC, he would face Dovletzdhan, and not only would he fight him, he would beat him, and not only would he beat him, but he would finish him with a third round TKO. And that fight would launch Corey Anderson directly into the Bellator title discussion, where he would follow that victory up with another win over Ryan Bader, and he would also knock him out, and that would set him up for a pair of fights with Vadim Nemkov. Now in the first fight with Corey and Vadim, we would see Corey have a very successful fight until the fight would be stopped with 5 seconds remaining in the third round after an accidental clash of heads that would result in a no contest. Then they would run it back at Bellator 288 in Chicago in November of 2022, a fight that myself and former co-host Noah got to see in person, and that time they would go the full 25 minutes with Vadim Nemkov retaining his championship. But Corey has not lost since, as he has now won 3 consecutive fights over Phil Davis, Carl Moore, and most recently, just a couple of months ago on July 19th in Cape Town, South Africa, he would defeat Denis Goltsov in the heavyweight division via second round TKO. And for Dovletzdhan, that was actually his Bellator debut when he would lose to Corey Anderson, and then he would follow it up with another loss, resulting in him starting his Bellator career 0-2, but since then, he has righted the ship to say the least, as he has tallied off 7 consecutive victories, including 4 of them in 2024 during the PFL tournament, en route to him becoming the champion by getting a first-round knockout over the former PFL champ and UFC veteran Impa Kasanganay. These two 36-year-old light heavyweights will enter the bout on a combined 10-fight win streak and riding a ton of momentum, but only one man can leave the event as the PFL light heavyweight champion. For Corey, it would be an incredible story for him because he went through the ringer during his days in the UFC, and while he would be a perennially ranked top 15 fighter, even in the top 5 for a majority of his run, he would never quite reach the precipice and get into title contention or into a title fight. He was always one win shy and would falter in his biggest moments. And for Dovletzdhan, this would absolutely, hands down, no argument, be the biggest win of his career, and being able to tally it back to back with a win over Impa Kasanganay would really say a lot about the skill set of him. So I don't only want your predictions for the main event, I want to get your thoughts on this co-main event as well, and who you think will leave as the PFL light heavyweight champ. In the featured bout, we have a pair of lightweight prospects surging right now, the 12-0 Archie Colgan and the 11-1 JJ Wilson, and the winner of this fight will be the #1 contender for that main event between Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes. Now, of course, Paul might get a victory and then we see a trilogy, but you get the point. It's a big fight with high stakes. Archie Colgan began his professional mixed martial arts journey in March of 2021 with a very high wrestling pedigree following him, and from a storyline perspective into the LFA, where he would start 2-0. Then he would get an opportunity in his third professional fight in Bellator and capitalize on it with a first-round knockout. Then he would get to fight for Khabib Nurmagomedov's promotion, Eagle FC, and get another victory. And then ever since then, it's been all under the Bellator/PFL banner, and he still has remained perfect throughout it all. And that includes his most recent victory back in June over Mansour Barnaoui, where he would earn a unanimous decision. And at that point, it was assumed that he was the #1 contender, but of course we found out that the PFL would run back the rematch between Usman and Paul instead. And rather than waiting, Archie Colgan is choosing to fight once again and furthermore prove that he deserves to be next for the lightweight crown. And for JJ Wilson, he will enter this fight on a 3-fight win streak, with the most recent coming in April, where he would get a third-round finish over Mads Burnell via TKO. And on this 3-fight win streak, he also holds a decision win over Mansour Barnaoui as well, and his lone loss in his entire career belongs to Gadzi Rabadanov, who was the 2024 PFL lightweight champion and just fought for the 2025 PFL lightweight tournament championship, but would lose to Alfie Davis. And while Archie Colgan's 50% finishing rate doesn't quite follow suit with JJ's having won 8 of his 11 by way of stoppage, this is absolutely a very high-level fight that could go either way, and I'm curious to see how both of them will rise to the occasion in what could potentially be the most competitive, hardest bout of each of their careers respectively. And with these high stakes on the line, being the featured bout on the same card that the title in their division is being defended, they're both going to be feeling it, and one of them will be able to rise to the occasion. Who will it be? Archie Colgan or JJ Wilson? That's for you to let me know down below. And lastly, I want to talk about a very intriguing bout in the Bantamweight division between Magomed Magomedov and Sergio Pettis, brother of the Wheaties box guy Anthony Pettis. The 4 losses on Magomed Magomedov's career resume belong to Petr Yan, former UFC Bantamweight champion, Rafion Stotts, former Bellator Bantamweight title challenger, and 2 losses to Patchy Mix, a former Bellator champion turned UFC fighter, actually fighting on the UFC 320 card card on Saturday. Outside of that, he has essentially dominated and controlled every single other one of his opponents, leading to a 21-4 record overall, including a decision win in June of this year over Sarvarjan Khamidov, and he also holds submission wins over Danny Sabatello and Enrique Barzola during his Bellator time. And for the Phenom Sergio Pettis, he will enter this bout having lost 2 of his last 3. However, the most recent fight was a victory, and it was against Rafael Stotts via decision back in June as well. And before that, the 2 losses were to Kyoji Horiguchi and Patchy Mix. But we can't forget that Sergio would become the Bellator champion after beating Juan Archuleta. He would have that insane spinning back fist knockout over Kyoji Horiguchi and defend the title against the Bellator legend Patricio Pitbull, who at that point was attempting to become a champion in his 3rd Bellator weight class. And of course, we know that Sergio Pettis was also a multi-fight veteran in the UFC's flyweight division as well, so he has a plethora of high-level experience, and this is a very big fight for the state of both him and Magomed Magomedov's careers moving forward into 2026 and what could be the Bellator Bantamweight title picture. Because it's highly likely that the winner of this fight between Magomedov and Pettis will get the crack at the inaugural PFL Bantamweight Champion Tournament winner, Marceli Alves, after he went 3-0 in the tournament this year and capped it off with a championship earning performance over Justin Wetzel. So that is it for this PFL fight card breakdown, and I want to get all of your thoughts, your predictions, and everything in between down in the comments below, especially for that main event rematch between Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes and what could lead to a all-time classic rivalry in the entirety of mixed martial arts history. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new, because every single week I not only break down the biggest and best fights and storylines heading into each card, but in the aftermath I recap the most meaningful results and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. And that support would go a long way because we are on the road to reaching 1,000 subscribers and hopefully before the end of the year, and I believe that we can do so if we continue to build this community. You can also join the discussion on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as like the Facebook page Verbal Sparring MMA, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes release there. Have a great weekend, enjoy all of these fights, and I will see you in the next video.